I was scrolling on TikTok as one does.
Uh-huh.
And there I stumbled upon a comedian actually talking about Kansas, but in a really funny way. So I'm just going to put it up to the mic. We don't necessarily have to show it because it's a comedian. You can hopefully just...
Schools have cheers, you know. Like, one of my favorites is Kansas. They're a big basketball school, you know. They say rock chalk Jayhawk, right? But they sing it real slow, like you're in a Catholic mass. Rock chalk. In the name of the Father.
Welcome to Ask a Kansan,
a podcast where we're amplifying, connecting, and uncovering stories across Kansas.
and we have another great interview for you today. But before we get to that, we wanted to just ask if you are a returning listener, if this isn't your first episode, would you consider leaving a review for us on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts?
Those reviews help other Kansans find us, so please leave us a review.
We'd really appreciate it. And now on to our introduction for our guest today. Betsy Wearing joined us from
the Dane Hansen Foundation. So they are a foundation that helps Northwest Kansas. They have a very widespread, she talks about kind of where
20 some
regionally,
counties.
they help out. But she's had a really amazing career in the nonprofit kind of spectrum on a different levels of that. So,
and Dane Hansen is a very unique organization, which if you don't already know about Dane Hansen, you're going to learn something about them today. So
without any further ado,
here's our interview with Betsy Wearing. Well, how are you today?
I'm good.
Good. Well,
I'm
thank
good.
you for
It's Friday.
coming on. Yeah, it's always a good day.
Very good. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on Ask Kansan today.
Sure.
Could we start just by having you introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. So my name's Betsy Wearing. I've lived in Salina for longer than I've lived anywhere else, although I was born in Oklahoma City. So I consider myself a Salinan. I work for the Dane Hansen Foundation, which I hope we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely.
I've been with them about 11 years. So before that, I had a consulting company for a short time before Hansen hired me. And then I worked for 15 years as the first president of the Greater Salina Community Foundation director. And then before that, I spent 15 years in marketing at Salina Regional. So that's probably as far back as we need to go.
Well, so I do want to ask, what brought you to Kansas then from Oklahoma City?
Actually, I was a Marymount College student. So
Nice.
I came to Marymount in 1980. So there gives you a little bit about how old I am. And I was a theater major there, went to college, graduated in 4 years, had a great job at the hospital offered to me. I was actually working at the television station first. We used to have a cable access TV station here called Channel 6, and I was a news reporter and anchor on Channel 6, and then went to work for the hospital. So some people honestly still remember me from Channel 6, which is kind of crazy because it's been a really long time ago.
That's awesome.
Like 40 years. But yeah.
So hospital, Greater Salina Community Foundation. When did you start realizing you might want to leap into nonprofit work?
Really all of those are nonprofits. So when I started at the hospital, it is a nonprofit, but it feels kind of corporate, hospital does. And I just really enjoyed the work. But honestly, when I was at the hospital, I served on a lot of nonprofit boards over that 15-year period, the Community Theater and the Red Cross and the CAPS and Martin Luther King Childcare. And I've always had a passion, I think, for nonprofit work. And my parents were all very active in nonprofit. They didn't work in the nonprofit industry, but we supported a lot of nonprofits. And so I kind of grew up knowing that it's our responsibility to help others in the world. So it sort of was a natural fit for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was really originally a board member for the Salina Community Foundation, the founding board. And then they decided to hire a director. It sounded like something I'd be interested in. So I did that. And then here I am working for a private foundation. So it's great.
So I'm going to go a little bit in the weeds on nonprofit for a second.
Okay.
So when you're at Center Regional obviously does have a foundation as well, but you're more on the receiving end probably of gifts and things. And then when you move to Greater Salina and now Dane Hansen, you're more on the giving side. Is that fair, or am I overgeneralizing?
A little bit. So I was the marketing director at Salina Regional. So I really didn't have anything to do with the foundation at that time. I was advertising and marketing our services and, working with our different departments on what their needs were and those kinds of things. And then also kind of a little bit of employee relations together with human resources for employee picnics. And, that's honestly, this dates me, but that's kind of when it first became a big deal to have like your name on a shirt or something like that. So we would do that kind of thing. So I don't really consider that part of my foundation background, but it was good marketing PR, which is important in every job I've ever had. So that was really good background for that. My college degree is actually in theater and secondary education, and I had a minor in journalism. So I've always loved to write. I've always been comfortable being in front of people. And so it's all kind of worked out. Then the community foundation, we both were receiving gifts from donors and helping donors figure out what they wanted to do and how the community foundation could be a vehicle for that. So it was receiving gifts, but it was also helping donors make grants and helping make grants in the community. And while I was there, we started the, Match Madness and a lot of things that are still carrying on today. So that's exciting. Hansen Foundation, we do not receive gifts at all. It's a private operating, it's a private foundation. And we operate from the endowment rule. So we have a large endowment that's grown from the gift Mr. Hansen left us 60 years ago. And what we do is find strategic ways to give that money away and leverage it with other donors and those kinds of things.
We're definitely going to get to Dane Hansen. I'm going to come back to that in a moment.
Sure.
Okay, so you moved here. You went to Marymount.
Yes.
What kept you in Kansas? Why didn't you move back to Oklahoma?
Okay, well, it's just the age-old story. It was a man. So I had a good job, and I met someone that I thought I was going to spend my life with. That didn't happen. But then I met another person, and that did happen. So, I met my husband, and we were married for almost 35 years before we lost him to cancer. And so he was a native Salinan who had left and come back. That's what kept me here for sure. 100%. First it was a man and a job, and then it was just the job, and then it was a job and another man. So there you go. So anyway,
sounds like a Hallmark movie almost.
A little bit, I guess. I don't know.
When were you first aware of Dane Hansen and the work that the foundation does?
Well, I'd always, just from living in Salina, kind of had heard about the scholarship program. And I had 3 sons that went through, high school here in Salina. So we got the mailings and things. So I always thought of them as a scholarship organization. And honestly, a lot of people in Salina still think of them mostly as a scholarship organization. But when I was at the community foundation, before I left there, we had been approached by the Hansen Foundation to help them do some work to expand their giving in more of their catchment area. So they hadn't done a lot of outreach. Most of their grants and the people that knew they were a grant maker were just right around their Logan area, which is where they're based in Logan, Kansas, in Phillips County. And they were really wanting to make sure they could cover more of their catchment area with their grants, and they wanted to utilize the Salina Foundation to help do that. So I met with them, started working with them on that project.
Well, I think now might be a good time for you to, if you would be so kind as to tell the story of Dane Hansen a little bit.
Sure. This is the 60th anniversary of the Hansen Foundation.
Oh, cool.
So I actually brought some pieces that, I could leave with you if you're interested. Mr. Hansen was a really unique individual. His parents, you kind of have to start with his parents. His dad was a first-generation immigrant from Denmark, where he moved to the United States to escape bad things that were happening in his country, invasions from Germany and some things like that. So he decided he wanted to come to the United States. He came. He was very entrepreneurial and did a lot of kind of failed as a farmer, but then bought mills and grew those, and then went into retail. And so he had a large scope of businesses. And then Mr. Hansen, Dane, kind of grew up watching all of that. And when he was 22, he became a partner in his dad's business, took over some of the retail work, et cetera. So he also very entrepreneurial. People describe him as if something needed to happen in the area, they went to Mr. Hansen, and he either took care of it or kind of worked with other people to make sure that it happened. So he owned so many businesses. He worked in the retail area with his parents for a long time. And then after his father passed away, he stayed in Logan, took care of his mom, took care of all the businesses. So eventually they got out of retail, but there's a really fun story. During World War I, Mr. Hansen and a business partner that he had at the time realized that the Army needed mules to move equipment, because think about the time period here. We didn't have a lot of tanks and those kinds of things, right? So he would scout the area, buy the mules, amass about 100 mules, and then he would sell them all to the Army. And so he was really a creative thinker as well as entrepreneurial. Then the war ended. He had all these mules. He's like, what am I going to do with them? So he was like,
Classic
well,
problem.
If they can move, classic problem. What do I do with all the mules, right? So he instead thought, well, if they can move heavy equipment for the Army, they can move heavy equipment for other businesses. So he started a road construction company. And actually his company built most of the roads in Northwest Kansas, and a lot of the highways we still drive on today, the bridge over the Republican River in Cloud County. So a lot of his work is still out there, in addition to the foundation, honestly. He was just a man that looked around to see what needed to happen and then made sure it did.
So did he do a lot of philanthropy during his lifetime, or how did he make this decision to found a foundation?
Well, it was interesting. He was very philanthropic, but quietly in his lifetime, honestly. He made a lot of gifts, helped other people make gifts. There's a great story from one of our sadly deceased but previous foundation trustees who knew him for many years. And he talked about he was working in the banking industry, and he was trying to raise money for the banker's house at the 4-H camp. And so he was tasked with that. And Mr. Hansen kind of walked in when he was talking to one of the people he was approaching, and that gift ended up being much larger than the person that Cy was talking to had intended to give. And then Mr. Hansen matched it. And so he did that kind of thing. He was really influential. So people didn't really want to not follow his lead, I would say. But he also, for example, during the Depression in the 1930, a lot of the family farms in the area were collapsing because of debt. And so Mr. Hansen made loans to them. If they couldn't repay them, then he acquired the property but allowed them to stay with really generous leases. So he ended up owning a lot of farmland, but still generations of families stayed there and worked the land, and they didn't lose their homes, even though they lost their property. And then later, that area was really discovered to be a pretty oil-rich basin. And so the farms that he had kind of acquired during that period of time, plus some other land that he had purchased, ended up being probably the most significant part of his wealth was from that. And when he was older, he died when he was 82. It's probably 80 or 81. I'm not sure of the date exactly. He found out that he had pancreatic cancer. So he knew what that meant. And he started really studying the Duke endowment. He was really fascinated by this whole concept of endowment and how it worked. So he had his accountant and his attorneys or whatever help him do some research. And he said, I really want to learn about this endowment, and decided that's what he wanted to do, was set up an endowment for his hometown of Logan and Northwest Kansas by extension. And he also had a trust that took care of his family. Anyway, that's kind of how that happened. And they got it all taken care of, 3 or 4 versions of it before he finally signed the final version in the fall before he passed away in January.
Oh, wow.
How much of how the foundation works today is still like the same as when it was founded, or has it changed a lot over the years?
It has changed a lot, but we still operate a lot the way he did. He wanted it at the beginning, I would say. So, for example, the scholarship program's always been part of the foundation. That was a very early part. We still have that program today with a separate committee that reviews all of that, does the work, selects the student recipients. It's expanded to include like career and technical education scholarships and some things that really weren't in play 60 years ago, right? But scholarships still maintained. So that's part of our original work. And also, honestly, we still do responsive grant making. So every single month, you can write a grant to the Hansen Foundation if you're within our service area and it's within our mission, and it'll get reviewed by the trustees.
Oh, wow.
But that's all the same. What's different would be things like, about 11 years ago, we started doing some strategic initiative work. And so in that regard, we started looking regionally at what the needs were and created several strategic initiatives that are still in play today. So our work has changed a lot in that regard.
How strictly defined is the area in which you work?
It's pretty strict. So it's a 26 county area from Saline County. If you follow Saline County, like Highway 81 north all the way to Nebraska and I-70 west all the way to Colorado.
So really like a corner.
It is one corner of the state. Now, Ellsworth kind of drops down below the interstate just a little bit, Ellsworth County, but they're in there. And we get a lot of, we're just one county over, but there's a lot of counties that are just one county over from that big square. So we call it the magic corner. Because that's the corner where Hansen Foundation is available for funding. And we give about $25 million away every year in those counties.
How much do you have to travel within all of that? Because that's still a big
I have a lot of windshield time. It just depends on what's needed. The technology's great, right? We can Zoom sometimes and those kinds of things. I go to a meeting with our trustees at least once a month. And usually we try to meet in Hayes because, of course, the board doesn't all live in the same place either. But the board still meets in Logan once a month, and I Zoom into that meeting. I travel a lot to the communities because most of the work that I do is with the Community Foundation initiative that we have. And so I drive to Goodland or St. Francis or Colby or Ellsworth or Wilson or Republic County or whatever. And the driving's not my favorite part, but the work when I get there, that's my favorite part. Really working with the people in the communities. It's really rewarding.
We're starting to touch some of those same communities with the work that we're doing here at the podcast. And I think it's been rewarding for us as well to get out and actually meet people and not just see it as a map, a dot on the map or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Oklahoma City, so pretty urban, not like New York City, but pretty urban, right? And then I lived in Salina, which for our catchment area is the most urban location for sure. So working with these much smaller communities and smaller counties, you just really learn about the people there, their commitment to living rural, why they love what they do, where they live, how they want to make it better. It's really inspiring to talk to the people that live out in that area. And I love that I work for some organization that is committed to that because it's a little bit unusual to find an organization that really wants to support a grant in a community of, 110 people.
It strikes me that there's a lot of things that make Dane Hansen unusual, maybe unique is another word that could be used. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that there's not like a executive director or a president of the foundation. Is that true?
It's a really odd organization chart, I guess you would say. So the board of trustees is a working board. So in essence, they sort of serve the role as the executive director might be. There's 7 trustees at any given time, and they chair committees and they work together. They're involved. So, I'm probably like maybe a quasi-executive director a little bit because I'm sort of the public face of the foundation in a lot of ways, and I'm out in the communities a lot. But the board, I don't think people realize the amount of time that the working board that we have. This isn't like serving on a nonprofit board where you come in once a month and you've read the materials and you help make decisions or set a mission. This is a board that's truly making operating decisions on a regular basis. They meet with the office staff twice a month. They really are involved in how we can move forward with the work that we're doing. So when I first started working with them, of course, I'd been an executive director, so I understand about working with boards, but still very different. But you kind of figure out the flow and the feel for how that works, and it's good. It's great. They're all very committed to what we do. And I think more so than, not to say anything bad about other nonprofit boards, but sometimes people really are just kind of, it's not on top of mind when you're not at a meeting. And for this group, I think the Hansen Foundation work is always percolating there in their day-to-day world.
Just because I'm so curious, was that by design of Dane Hansen, or was that something that came later?
Well, I think I'd have to go back to a story.
Okay.
I think I'd have to go back to a story about when the foundation started before he passed away. I don't think Mr. Hansen had any idea of the scope of the foundation's growth. There's a really cool story. I've told it 1,000 times because it's my favorite story about him. The same trustee that I mentioned earlier that was out raising money for the Bankers Association. He was a young investment banker when Mr. Hansen was working and living in Logan. And when he got ill, Cy Moyer was his name. And when Mr. Hansen got ill, Cy went to visit him in the hospital. And as he walked in, all the attorneys and accountants were walking out. They had just signed his last document for his estate plan. And so Cy went in, said hello to Mr. Hansen. Mr. Hansen said, "Oh, young Cy, guess what I just did?" And he said, I wouldn't have any idea. And he said, "I just signed my estate plan." And he said, "Guess what I did?" And Cy's like, "Mr. Hansen, I don't have any idea." And he said, I'm creating a foundation for Logan in Northwest Kansas. And it started with about $12 million. And he said to Cy, "Do you think anything will ever come of it?" That was the question. And Cy said, "Well, I mean, remember, this is like was 1962 or whatever." So he said, "Well, Mr. Hansen, I think if they take good care of it, it could be maybe $60 million someday." And he said, Mr. Hansen said, "Do you really think so?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." So, well, that was 60 years ago. And now, using a 5% payout rule, we give away about $25 million from that original $12 million gift. So that's a way to answer your question on, was it always that way? I mean, there was no way to understand at that point for him how large the footprint of his legacy would be.
This episode is sponsored by Renaissance Cafe. Serving Northern Italian cuisine prepared with a fresh, contemporary influence, the Renaissance Cafe is one of Kansas's favorite restaurants. Whether you're planning a romantic dinner date, a family celebration, or an intimate meal with friends, the Renaissance provides a unique dining experience with an old-world atmosphere. Open Thursday through Saturday evenings, the Renaissance Cafe is located just south of Salina in Assyria, Kansas. Visit renaissancecafeassyria.com to book your reservation today.
Through all your experience in all the different avenues that you've had in your career, what are some of the stories that have really resonated with you as you've had these experiences?
Gosh, there's so many. One of the reasons we started the Northwest Kansas Today magazine was to start capturing some of those stories. The issue that we just put to press today, that'll be out probably about the time this comes out, had some amazing stories. There's a young woman that we feature that wanted to start a theater camp for people with disabilities. She was 16 when she started it, and it's still going. And now she's graduated from college, and she's still making it work. And she's got like 40 people participating every year. And it's just a passion that she had, and she was able to make it work. And I think sometimes that's because you're in a community that doesn't say, we can't do that because it's too small here. We don't get a lot of that out there. People are kind of like, yeah, let's make it work. We have a great story about an entrepreneurial farmer who's like, let's look at farming differently. Let's look at how we preserve farming in a different way. So those kinds of people just inspire me, because it's not just what's the next piece of equipment I want to buy, but how can I really look at the work I'm doing differently and how it'll change the world someday. And there's a lot of great stories. I mean, we had great stories back when I was at the Community Foundation, too. One of my favorite grants from probably 20 years ago, again, a young person applied for like $500 to help, update the park benches at her community park. And that money, people got excited and they ended up replacing the basketball goals and redoing the bathroom, and the whole community got involved. And I think that's one of the cool things about philanthropy and small communities is that some spark starts, and for the most part, people want to jump in and help and make it happen. And there's just so much pride in community out there. Not that they don't have their issues, because everybody does, but for the most part, I'm impressed with how people, again, rural by choice. And that's a phrase I had never heard before I went to work for Hansen. And I love it because it's, I think sometimes people in larger communities think, why would you ever want to live in a town of 150 people or a town of 1,000 people? And they would sit you down and give you a lot of reasons why they want to do that. So it's inspiring.
Northwest Kansas today is such a gift to the region.
Thank you.
The quality of the writing, the quality of the photography, the layout, it's all just very, very well done.
Thanks.
There's something really valuable about holding up a mirror to a place and saying, look how great you are. And I feel like that's what Northwest Kansas today is.
Well, that's the idea, really. We were just at a trustee meeting, and one of the trustees was talking about one of the counties had their own publication, and she said, I just love this. I would like to do something like this. I'm like, well, we can do that. I mean, I wasn't afraid of that project at all. I knew a great designer. Julie Hess Design does all of our design. She's amazing. And I said, we'll have to hire a writer. I don't have time to write it all. Plus, you need more than one voice. Yeah. For sure. But at that time, things were changing at the Salina Journal. And I knew a reporter that was originally from Colby, of course, in our service area.
That worked out.
And I'm like, I think this person would be somebody we might want to interview. We ended up hiring her, Erin Matthews, and she does a great job. So people are a little bit surprised. It's a staff of 3 that puts that magazine out, but it's kind of a labor of love and fun for me to have that creative piece still in my world, because a lot of the rest of the work is less so, and I love to write. I've always been a writer.
Kansas Wesleyan is proud to be the educational crossroads of North Central Kansas. As a partner of Ask a Kansan, we share the desire to build our communities and to discover what makes our region special. Learn more about the power of and at kwu.edu. So you've mentioned that in recent years, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding what you said, but you're kind of taking a more strategic look at your region of focus and trying to look at what the big issues are and how to systemically address them. I mean, would you mind just kind of naming some of those issues that you're trying to address?
Sure. So we started back in 2017 was the first strategic initiative we launched. Actually, maybe a little before that, the organization had started another nonprofit called the Innovation Center. And that's really an economic development organization, serves the same 26 county area that we do. And they do things that we can't do as a charitable organization due to tax structures and things like that. So they can help small businesses and make loans. And they're now the Small Business Development Center for that area. And they do that kind of work. So that was probably the first real strategic thing that the foundation did. Then we launched an initiative for early childhood literacy. So that's how we pay for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library for all the children in our area, which of course now is statewide, which is exciting. And we like to think we had just a tiny bit of influence in that kind of a thing. We're sort of a great pilot area for things that may want to go statewide because we cover a large portion of the state. So that early childhood literacy was the first one. Northwest Kansas Reads is what we call it. We also do summer reading grants as part of that. And then we did Northwest Kansas Learns, which a lot of people don't know as much about, but unless you work in a school. So we went to organizations that were outside of our area, like the Cosmosphere and the Kansas Learning Center for Health and the Eisenhower Foundation and Rolling Hills Zoo, even though they're in our area. And we said, what kind of great educational programming do you have for youth that you can bring into our classrooms? Because, as I like to say, not really anybody I know wants to get on a bus full of fourth graders in Sharon Springs, Kansas, and drive to the Cosmosphere.
Oh my gosh.
And back in one day.
Yeah.
So we felt like our kids were kind of missing out on a lot of really cool things that were right here in the state of Kansas, but they weren't getting exposed to them. So we pay 100% of the expense for those organizations to come out and bring that kind of educational material to any teacher in any classroom in our Northwest Kansas area for public schools. So that's been a fun initiative. We also did an arts initiative because we did a project called Strategic Doing, where we went out and said, tell us what you need, tell us what you're doing, what's good, what's necessary. And that's where some of these initiatives came from, especially the arts initiative. So we partner with Mid-America Arts Alliance out of Kansas City area, and they have a great program where if you want to bring in an artist in your community, they can pay for 50% of that artist fee.
Wow.
Then we would pay for the other 50% if it's in our area. Those are all out-of-state artists, so that's part of their mission is to bring different artists into different areas. We'll also pay 50% if it's a Kansas artist, but they also have to do community outreach while they're there. So that's been a fun program to help bring in a lot of theater programs and vocal performances and things like that in our communities. So that one got launched, and then we did a leadership launch where we try to help communities that want to do leadership programming. So let's see, which one am I missing? That's Learns and Reads and Arts. Oh, and then the Childcare, Northwest Kansas Cares for Kids. So there's about 6 different childcare grants that we do because clearly a huge issue statewide. And also Innovation Center has a childcare specialist now that's helping communities address their childcare needs. What's best for them? Do they need more home providers? Do they need a center? Do they need small centers? So we're pretty deep into that. And we've done a lot of work in housing as well. So right now we have a program that's offered through the Innovation Center, funded by the Hansen Foundation, partnering with the state of Kansas to build new homes in Northwest Kansas. So they're going and blowing doing that. It's been great.
$25 million is a lot of money. It's not as much as it once was, obviously.
It's not.
But it strikes me that Northwest Kansas is probably one of the regions in the country that can make that money go as far as anywhere.
Yes.
And just the breadth of the things you just described is remarkable.
Well, I think we try to be strategic with how we spend it. Of course, like every good funder, we try to leverage as much as we can. So like, for example, on the housing program, we were really appreciative of the state's participation in that program. We've got some childcare work we're doing now for sustainability. The state's also been a big partner in that with us. So Department of Commerce has been really active in the last few years in rural areas. So that's been helpful for us. But yes, one of our trustees often says the per capita charitable giving in Northwest Kansas could be among some of the largest in the country because of the work that Hansen's doing. And also because we're helping to build wealth through local community foundations. So we have which is part of the work that I'm most involved with for the Hansen Foundation. We have a countywide community foundation, every one of our counties. Some of them pre-existed the work. Some of them I actually helped start when I was in Salina through their affiliate program. So now I'm just helping them through a different organization. But we have a matching program for them. Almost every one of them has more than $1 million in assets since we've started that work with them. So capturing the local wealth for the local people to use forever and ever has been really exciting work for me. Yeah.
That's really exciting because it also obviously gives some agency over the things that are funded in their area.
Absolutely.
And we had a guest on not too long ago, Rex Buchanan, former head of the Kansas Geological Survey. And I pick up valuable lessons from every interview we do.
Sure.
And that one of the ones was, we were talking about, the status of water in Western Kansas. And he kind of cautioned me that like ultimately Western Kansas needs to probably be the one making decisions about how to deal with this. And so I love that your model is kind of both like providing funding, but also providing some agency so folks in these
Absolutely.
communities can have some control. With that thought in mind, and I guess I'm going to show my hypocritical side a little bit here, two-faceted question. Facet one is, what is happening in northwestern Kansas today that the rest of the state can learn from? And facet two is, what all in northwest Kansas do you need help with that the rest of the state could help?
I think leveraging funding and promoting communities not only to work together, but also some regionalization. And I'll give you an example. I don't think this is unusual to Northwest Kansas, but within a county, in a rural area, often there's like one or two kind of population centers. And often they don't want to play with each other.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very territorial. And we have worked really hard to break down those barriers. For example, we're like, nope, we're not going to give you two community foundations that we work with. You can have as many as you want, but we're only going to fund one that works countywide. So we've tried to help break some of those barriers down. And I think that is actually happening and has happened over the last several years, and other counties could learn from that, or other areas of the state. Plus, just as a region, we do some things regionally. So I think we're helping to kind of share the message that we don't live in silos, and we really need to work together if we want to be successful. So I think that's the lesson maybe we can share with some people. I think that what we need help with, I think just learning, I'm going to show my bias a little bit. I think one of the critical needs we have, not just in Northwest Kansas, but a lot of places, is good, strong nonprofit boards and having them really understand their role. It's a little bit like local politics in that it's not a position you can go into with an agenda. You really have to wear the hat of the organization when you're at the table. You need to support the staff. Don't just walk into a meeting and walk out an hour later and not think about the organization again. So I think we have a lot of work to do still in educating. And because we're growing those nonprofits, that work's becoming more important, the role of the board. We have great people out there. They just haven't really had to operate in that way before. So I think that's been a big challenge for us. And whether we need help from other people to get that done, or it's something that we've certainly been paying attention to and working on, trying to support those boards, educate them, help them sort of see what an important role they can play in the growth of their communities and their counties. And yes, the third one was the first one.
No,
what was that?
I think that covered it.
Okay.
You did
All
great.
right.
Well
Good.
done. I specialize in questions I don't know how to answer.
Do you, on the issue of boards and finding quality people that understand what their role is, do you think that has anything to do with kind of the volunteer mindset? Is how a lot of organizations and nonprofits are struggling just to get volunteers, not just board members, but volunteers to help them with whatever projects. Kind of things that I've experienced is people don't understand that you volunteer to help somebody, you're not going to get anything out of it. Have you seen that trend in the nonprofit space, or is that maybe just thing that I'm just projecting?
I think that is less of an issue in rural communities, honestly. There's a smaller population that can't really afford to have that mindset very much. I mean, a great example, sometimes out of tragedy, you see better things. A great example would be, Grinnell, Kansas had a tornado go through and it was very damaging. And, that within 24 hours, people from multiple counties were all there. They were doing the cleanup, et cetera. Years ago, a couple of years ago, we had the terrible wildfires that went through like the Russell area or whatever. Within 24 hours, people were arriving with truckloads of hay for the cattle and providing support. So, and I think that happens in cities as well, but in smaller communities, you can't just rely on the person next door. You got to rely on the person next door and next door and next door because we don't have as many people out there. But they're fiercely independent, but they're also fiercely protective of their area and their neighbors. And so I don't think we have a hard time getting people to volunteer. That's kind of a way of life. I laugh because if you are interviewing someone for a magazine story or just talking to someone in most of our rural communities, I would say, they are probably doing 3 jobs pretty regularly. Yeah. They are a farmer, but they're also a rural firefighter, but they're also, helping, run the grocery store, or they're on the school board, or
so they may not be getting paid for.
Yeah. They don't get paid for a lot of them, right? Yeah. But nobody just does one thing. And part of that's because there's not a lot of people, and part of it's because that's just the rural mindset. If I want it to happen, I'm going to have to make it happen. Now, do we have cave people in rural Kansas? We do. And, the Citizens Against Virtually Everything, Yeah. I don't want anything to change. I don't want new growth in my community. I don't want, I'm not worried about the future. But I'd say, by and large, not as much. And we found that during COVID, we had more people coming home because they realized we can work virtually. We don't have as much of an issue with dense population, and maybe it's okay to come back here for a while. So we actually saw some population growth during that crazy time.
It strikes me that, obviously Dane Hansen is the reason why this money is there and why you all work there and make it all happen. I have a feeling, though, that if Dane was here in the room with us and he could talk about what it's become, he would say that it's no longer about just his legacy. It's now about kind of our legacy in this region and your legacy as stewards of his memory and of these funds, obviously. So in the vein of having some control over the legacy moving forward, what do you want it to be? Both, for the foundation itself, but also, the uncomfortable question, your legacy, what impact do you hope your effort has?
First of all, I would say we talk about Mr. Hansen a lot in the boardroom. Mm-hmm. What would Mr. Hansen want? What would he think about this? And of course, we don't know because 60 years ago we lost him. But we have good information about the kind of man that he was and the work that he did. So we still think about that, and we think about wanting to make grants that he would be proud of, grants that further people but also push people. So I belong to another organization whose motto is we want to give people a hand up, not a hand out. And I think about that when I think about Mr. Hansen, because I feel like that's very much how he operated. He wasn't all about let's just give you what you need. It was about, let me help you figure out what you need and make that happen. And how can you become more self-sustaining? And I think the initiative work that we do is really designed for that. And in a lot of ways, also the responsive grant making that we do, that will probably always be part of the DNA of the foundation. I mean, when I started there, and this is kind of getting into a little bit of maybe what my legacy would be for them. When I started at the foundation, you could submit a grant request on a piece of notebook paper or the back of a napkin. So today we have online grants, and that has enabled the reach to be so much larger in the area, which, if you remember when I talked about when I was in Salina Foundation, that was kind of what they came to us for initially, because we had a good regional organization. They were like, how do we expand the reach of the Hansen Foundation into our full coverage area? And I feel like we've accomplished that. Also, I think they hired me to help them with the strategic work. So the Early Childhood Reading Initiative and the Learns Initiative and all, I feel like I had a hand in all of those, which to me gives me a lot of pride, because one of the cool things about working for the Dane Hansen Foundation that I have found after working for a nonprofit, the Salina Foundation, and working in the healthcare industry, very different, is that you might have an idea, but it could take quite a while for you to just get it done. We can just pivot so quickly with a board of 7 that have 100% of the decision-making capacity. So if we bring an idea to a board meeting, we can be operating that idea within 12 months easily. And that just doesn't happen very often. And to someone like me, that is probably, patience might not be my very greatest virtue. It's so much fun to work for an organization like that. So to be able to say they're ready to do strategic work, they hired me, I've been able to bring some ideas. Some we went forward with, some we didn't. But for the most part, I feel like when I leave the Hansen Foundation, it'll be just helping them really make that transition from responsive only to responsive and strategic work. And that's going to be exciting for me to watch them continue that someday when I'm not there.
Yeah, that's responsive and strategic. That's a great way to put it. Wow.
Yeah, for 100%. Responsive grant makers always. You can write a grant to the Hansen Foundation. They may or may not fund it, but there's an opportunity there for them to review your grant, decide if they want to fund it. It might be something really small in a small community. It might be something really large that's multi-county, and they look and read all of them. And that's another thing about being a working board. We make grants every single month, even December, and we might review 17 applications, and we might review 57 applications in a month. Sometimes it's well, actually, that's how many we had this month. So that's why that came to mind, because I'm like, I don't remember if we've ever had that many before, but maybe we have. And they're attentive to all of those, and they pay attention to that. And as somebody that's worked in grant making philanthropy for many years now, I admire that every grant gets considered. It may not take very long to say we don't want to fund it, and it may not take very long to say this is a no-brainer, we do want to fund it. But they all get read, and they all have their moment of discussion in the boardroom. And I think that's really important as a grant maker, really important. So I appreciate our board and the work that they do to pay attention to that. And I think that Mr. Hansen was a thinker, and he would look at every opportunity and make a decision. So I think that's part of his legacy too. We need to look at we're not getting them on the back of a napkin anymore, but we might still get a grant request for $150. Not as often, because we've built the local community foundations who can do a lot of that smaller grant work. But every once in a while, we still do. And we'll look at that grant just as much as we'll look at a grant that we might get for $800,000.
There's so many things that I know we didn't touch on, and I would encourage our audience to go check out your website. If you're ever by Logan, stop by. I know there's a museum there.
And it is fabulous.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
Yeah. So there's a lot more to discover. We've only teased it here, but thank you for taking time to come on the podcast today and tell us about Dane Hansen and your own journey.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Want to spread your organization's message across Kansas? Consider becoming a sponsor. Ask a Kansan has a unique focus on Kansas and its people. By sponsoring our podcast, your organization can reach people from Canarado to Kansas City, Wichita to Washington, and all the great places in between. We have a variety of sponsorship packages available to fit your budget and needs. For more information, visit askakansan.com/sponsorships or call us at 785-571-9507. Hope you enjoyed that episode with Betsy. I wish I could have like a favorite takeaway, but we've talked about like so much in the nonprofit kind of world.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that I didn't realize is how much that foundation touches and how many things not only they help fund, but they help start.
When you consider, I don't know, I think in the materials she gave us, it said how many millions of dollars they've given since their inception. But when you think about what Northwest Kansas would be like today without that huge economic impact that they have, or not just economic, but just the millions of dollars they've poured into that region, our region, is incredible. I think it's something that people in from Salina to the Northwest, they know, they've heard about it maybe,
but they don't really know.
Yeah, but the rest of the state maybe doesn't know, and so it's neat.
Okay, you ready? We are doing a Where in the Rectangle today, provided by Tanner. So Tanner recently got his drone license, and so he's been a little drone maniac and doing some really cool things.
We might explain, just in case this is somebody's first episode.
Oh, yeah. So Tanner is our photojournalist. He goes through all the corners of the states, of the state and finds really cool stories, whether that's people, places, things. And these stories can be found on our website, askakansan.com. Click on Curious Kansan, and you can find all of those.
And where in the rectangle is our segment where one of us has to guess where something is in the rectangle.
Exactly. So today I want you to tell me where these rocks are at.
Okay. I feel like I can probably get this because I think I've been there. I'm pretty sure this is Rock City. Yep, Rock City. I think that's near Minneapolis. So then the question is, which county is it in? Okay. I'm about 90% sure this is Ottawa County.
You are correct.
Ch-ch.
I'm more impressed that you got it so quickly because when I looked at this, I was like, it reminds me of like the top-down view in Frozen when you see all the trolls in the boulders. That's what that picture reminded me of.
Oh, that's funny. Yep.
Because I'm like, oh, it's all the little trolls. But no, yes, it is in Ottawa. And one of the fun things, if you go, you can click to the next slide, is that this is not a like public site. It's private. And it's registered as a national landmark. It's a privately owned park. So $5, that's what keeps this going. So you go there. It's $5 to explore, and you can see all the fun rock formations and just kind of just have, there's benches everywhere. So you can sit, you can have a little picnic. You can just kind of have a fun little family kind of moment. Like if you're going, North Kansas and you just drive by and you have lunch somewhere, it's a really cool spot. It's on my list to take the kids because I can imagine this is probably, I don't know if they permit climbing on the rocks, but I can imagine the rock to rock jumping
liabilities on you. So.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like it's like Kids Zone Central, but it's also just really cool because where else are you going to find just these random round rock formations?
They're very large.
They're very large.
You can kind of, I don't know if the audience is able to see this picture, there's a bench for some reference point, but yeah, you can't see all sides of them at once. You have to kind of explore. I've been there twice, once a few years ago, and once I think when I was a kindergartner, we had my birthday party there, and it was the best birthday ever because we just ran around on these rocks for 2 hours, and my mom just sat there and had a good time.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great place. Yep.
This is not even remotely related to anything we're talking about, but my daughter wanted to have her birthday at McDonald's. She wanted a princess party at McDonald's. She wanted me to hire a princess. Tell that princess to go to McDonald's for this kid's birthday party. We did not do that, but I'll take
but you could have. You could have.
I could have.
Anyway. So if you do make a day out of going to Rock City, try to make it. Minneapolis is not far away, right? Minneapolis. Yeah. And there's a great little place there called the Farm and the Oddfellows. It's it's like a brewery, and they have like snack trays and things, and it's just a wonderful place. One of my favorite places to go. So yeah, if you go to Rock City, plan on stopping by Minneapolis.
Yeah, there's also I have to remember the name. There's a lot of really cute like local shopping in Minneapolis. It's like the Leopard Boutique or the Leopard Spotted Boutique or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But there's also I think just check out Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I can't remember everything that's there because I haven't been there in a hot minute. But there are a lot of really cool locally owned shops and restaurants.
I play in a band, and we played over the summer at their county fair there, and there's few of these county fairs left that have all of the original rides that they're not brought in by an outside company. They're local. And, real warm community vibes. So another thing to check out. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Ask a Kansan. If you would be so kind as to leave a review if you liked today's episode, or like, comment, subscribe, all the different things on all the different platforms, we would really appreciate it. But the number one way you can help us is by telling at least one other person about what it is we're trying to do here.
Yeah. And please join us next time
on Ask a Kansan. Have a good day.
Bye.